The first time Colton called me sir was the day he asked to marry my daughter. The last time was the night he took my company and said I should enjoy retirement like folks your age. 2 years separate those moments. In the first, his hands shook when he asked for Grace's hand on my back porch in Round Rock, eyes soft, voice rehearsed. In the last, his hands were steady on a whiskey glass he had not paid for, voice slick as a Houston rain, and my name sounded like a mercy he would grown tired of giving. I was not born rich. I was born in a cedar-planked shotgun house outside Luling, where the dirt stains your fingernails and the wind smells like oil, damp hay, and asphalt after the first August thunder. I turned wrenches, laid rebar, bought a used dump truck on a 17% note, then another, then five, until the trucks became a yard, and the yard became Kingfisher Materials, aggregate, hot mix, concrete, and the asphalt that paves neighborhoods nobody remembers until a storm peels them raw. 40 years, 2 hurricanes, 1 recession, and a widow's quiet stomach for risk made it what it was. Grace grew up thinking hard hats were just hats. Her mother, Elana, died when Grace was 13. After that, it was just us and the yard. She learned accounts receivable before she learned prom dates, and when she met a man who wore clean boots and spoke clean numbers, I recognized the relief in her smile. Plenty of men have money. Fewer have manners. Colton presented both. He came from Fort Bend, master's in finance, SEC certified planner at a boutique firm in Austin, hair parted like a measuring line. Grace brought him around the yard the week after he proposed. He stepped careful over the hose lines, smiled for the men, asked the right questions about haul weights and TX inspectors, and did not flinch when a loader belched gravel against the bin with a clap like thunder. The foreman, old Harlan, pulled me aside. "Pretty boy's got soft hands," he said, "but he looks you in the eye. Might be he learns." I wanted that to be true. Love makes you want the world to be softer than it is. Their wedding was in Dripping Springs, all limestone and string lights, and a hill country sunset big enough to forgive anything. I gave Grace a deed to the house she loved, paid in full, and Colton, silent promise. I would not stand between man and the life he intended to build with my daughter. That is a promise you can keep, and still keep your eyes open. He started making suggestions 6 months in. "You know, sir, you could unlock a lot of value with a line of credit against the real estate." "Sir," then a glint. "Non-dilutive, tax-efficient, lets you modernize. We can model it." He said it like he would bled into the slab with me. I nodded and let him talk, let him show me deck slides about inventory turns and carrying costs, while the smell of diesel drifted from the yard, and my men sprayed down the summer dust. You do not run a Texas materials outfit for 40 years and not learn to live with debt. You also do not last unless you understand which debts own you. I have signed paper in storm season, with a banker tapping his pen, because my trucks were still on the wrong side of I-10, and I needed another 3 weeks to meet a covenant. But I never levered the dirt. Dirt is different. Dirt is the last place you can sleep when the house burns down. So I told Colton, "Oh," and he smiled like a good son. Then he said it again 3 months later, adding words like Roth ceiling and private equity. Then he stopped saying sir and started calling me Big Jim, which I have never been, and he let it slide into conversations like an oil sheen on water. The first crack showed itself in a place I did not expect, the coffee room whiteboard. We keep a simple system. Trucks are magnets, jobs are lines. The foreman moved the pieces like a chess match every morning. One Wednesday, I saw an extra magnet labeled Hilltop Ventures, VIP. Nobody knew who put it there. Harlan shrugged. "New client?" he said. "He's never been a good liar." Later that day, I saw the same name stamped on the bottom of a fuel invoice in printer ink, so faint you would miss it if you had not learned to read pale numbers for a living. I asked our controller, Denise. She has been with me 23 years, seen 3 software migrations and 2 marriages. "What is Hilltop?" I asked. She looked down. A pass-through, Jim. Colton set up a vendor account for high-margin loads. Says it is for a portfolio of infill builders. They are good for it. She blinked longer than she should have. I did not want to bother you with a few test POs. Who signs the checks? Accounts payable clears them. Automated release. Batch approval. Who approves the batch? She swallowed. Colton. I walked out into the August glare. On the rail of the batch plant, sun heated the steel until it could blind you. The loader operator, Mickey, gave me a two-finger salute. I thought about the magnets and the whiteboard, the faint stamp, and the smell of something that has just barely started to cook. That night, I searched public filings over cold brisket in a quiet house, Hilltop Ventures, LAC, registered in Delaware, Texas Foreign Entity Filing, Manager, Grace Hayes, not Colton, not me, Grace. My daughter's name in black letters, stapled to a paper knife. The office was mostly empty when I drove back. We keep a safe on my desk, with the old stuff, original deeds, share certificates, Elena's ring. I added something that night, a yellow legal pad with a list titled, If I Am Wrong on one column, and If I Am Right on the other. I wrote down what I would need either way, a forensic accountant, a copy of our banking authority, the current lien table on every parcel, an independent appraisal of the real estate, and coffee enough to flood a county. The forensic accountant's name is Eva Morales. We met after Harvey, when a contractor tried to short me on a job by hiding costs in a joint venture that did not exist. Eva is fun at parties if your parties are full of men who like to pretend the spreadsheet is a moral universe. Bring me your sins, she said when she answered on the second ring. I am bored. Find me a shell, I said, and gave her the name. I will have you a tree by Friday. The bank manager's name is Stephen Kim, and he thinks my first name is. He made assistant VP by never saying no to a mortgage tied to land within 30 miles of a Tesla rumor. I stopped by his branch the next morning with 24 Shipley donuts and a question about our treasury platform, particularly about who could add new templates for ECH vendors. Stephen used words like proprietary and permissions until I reminded him that his bank held a $7.05 million revolver against my receivables, and I held the conversation in my hand like a wrench. Let me print the current user roles, he said, and did. Grace's credentials had admin privileges. So did Colton's. Is he authorized? Stephen asked, cautious as a deer. He will be, I said, until he is not. When a bad smell finds you, you do not run from it. You follow it. Ava sent her tree on Thursday. Hilltop linked to Stone Harbor Holdings, a private lender out of Dallas, with a taste for 18% paper collateralized by anything that looked like dirt. There was a UCC-1 filing perfected against future proceeds of contracts originated through Hilltop Ventures, and a personal guarantee signed by Grace Hayes. My daughter had guaranteed a line of credit she could not afford to catch with a net made of vapor and story. My phone buzzed. A text from Grace. Dinner tonight? Colton's got news. Good news, Dad. Please come. 7 p.m. at the Driscoll. I stared at the text until the letters blurred. I had not stayed away. I would given them space, which is the polite name for distance. You can raise a daughter into her own house and still lose sight of the calendar on her fridge. The Driscoll is built the way we used to build. Heavy, copper, tiled, with a lobby that smells like polished wood and old promises. They sat at a corner table. Grace's hair was up. Colton's tie was perfect. He stood to shake my hand with both of his. Big night, he said. We did it. What would you do? I asked. We modernized, he said, and slid a folder across the table. Inside, a glossy pitch deck for Kingfisher 2.0, new fleet financing, ERP upgrade, expansion into 2 new yards, north of Temple and south of San Marcos. A $10 million non-dilutive capital injection, asset-backed, tax-efficient, best practices. It was textbook. It was clever. And then I reached the last page. He had pledged the dirt. Grace? I asked. Without looking up, she touched my wrist. Dad, listen. We had to. You were capped. The bank would never give you the multiple you deserve without collateral modernization. Colton negotiated it so the terms are all in our favor. Interest only for 24 months. We will refinance long before the balloon. This is how everyone does it now. Everyone. That is a word people use when they learn a trick and want to believe it erases gravity. Where is the signature page? I asked. Already filed, Colton said, sipping his drink. We closed on Monday. We did not want to bother you with the paperwork. We know operations are not your favorite. I looked at Grace, whose signature. She did not answer. She did not have to. I knew my own hand, and I had not signed a thing. You forged me, I said, voice level as the table. Colton's smile barely flickered. You were authorized, he said. You will thank me when the EBTA doubles. This is bigger than a single man's feelings. It is legacy, sir. He said sir like he was giving me a flag at a funeral. Here's the thing about quiet men. We are not quiet because we cannot talk. We are quiet because we are listening. Because somewhere down the line a storm taught us that shouting at the wind is dumber than latching the door. I folded the deck, slid it back, and excused myself to the men's room. I looked at my face in the mirror and saw the man who taught a child to ride a bike in a cul-de-sac with fresh asphalt, who told her grades mattered and people mattered more, who signed his name to a yard that fed 100 families. Then I called Ava. Buy me their debt, I said. You sure? Yes. Which piece? All of it. You can reach, I said. Start with Stone Harbor. If they will not sell, buy the syndicate's ragged edges. Find the weak bag holder. There is always a fund that wants to show realized gains by quarter end. How fast? Before he learns to smile with his eyes when he says legacy, I said, and hung up. The next week was a boil. Ava worked phones like a broker on the last day before an IPO lockup. Stone Harbor did not sell, but a secondary lender, a Houston family office that liked to pretend it was a fund, had paper on the ERP lease and a mezzanine slice behind the new fleet financing. They were yield-hungry and spooked by the UCC. One footnote they would miss about after acquired property. We used to cook it off their hands at par, plus 1.5 points. Then we found a factor out of San Antonio that had bought a strip of our receivables, unaware that Colton had tied them to that same after-acquired clause. They were eager to unload. Ava bought that too, under Cedarline Holdings, LLC, a company I would formed the year Elena died, because grief makes you practical if it does not kill you outright. While Ava filleted paper, I met with Pritchard Insurance, the outfit that has kept our trucks legal since Bill Clinton wore ties wide enough to land planes on. Well, what if I wanted to move the fleet policy, I asked, to a different roll-up effective on renewal? Would affect lien holders, Pritchard said. I nodded and made a note. I also called Judge Ramirez, who is not a judge anymore, but keeps the name like an old scar. We'd play dominoes twice a month. He knows where paper meets courtrooms and which clerks file faster if you bring breakfast tacos. Hypothetically, I asked, if a man forged a partner's signature on a land-backed loan, and that partner bought the junior debt and waited, how does a man pull the string without snapping it? He smiled into his coffee. Pathetically, quietly, you file a declaratory judgment action in Travis County to contest the validity of the security instrument. You ask for a temporary restraining order to pause any foreclosure activity while you conduct forensic review. You notify the title insurers and make them nervous. But if you are not ready to go nuclear, you do not file. You just let him hang from a covenant default that you trigger from below. Trigger with what? With the debt he does not know you hold. A balloon called early on a tech lease, a small vendor he used as off-balance sheet working capital, deciding not to roll invoices. A fleet policy that lapses unless a premium clears Friday by noon. A fuel supplier with the right to reclaim under the Texas Business and Commerce Code if a financial condition was misrepresented. None of these kill a company alone. Together they act like gravity. And the last push? The bank, he said. Find the banker who wants a clean file. I already had a name. All of this I did with my voice never rising above the level you would use to order breakfast. At home at night, I sanded the arms of Elena's old rocking chair and oiled it until the cedar came back to life. The house was silent in the summer way, air conditioners cycling like slow breath, cicadas screaming at failure in the live oaks. I looked at Grace's pictures on the mantel and thought about the difference between saving someone and letting them fall through the hole they cut in their own floor. On a Tuesday, hot, vicious, sun like a hammer, Ava texted, "Got it." She had purchased through Cedarline enough of the stack to control the covenants on the IRP lease and the receivable facility. She had also found the weak seam, a clause in the ERP paper that allowed the lessor to declare a material adverse change. He management was implicated in fraud. She had documented the forgery. She had emails Colton sent to Denise, pressuring her to expedite wet signature duplication, to meet Monday filing, and to scan PDF that showed my name in ink fonts that did not match the pen I have used for 20 years. Ava is, as she says, boring for pay. I thanked her and called Stephen. Pull the treasury permissions for Colton, I said. He hissed, breath. You want me to freeze his administrative rights, I said. Grace's too. Set me as the sole approver on any outbound transfer above 10 grand, effective now. I need an authorizing doc on letterhead. It is on your desk, I said. He looked down. It was. That night, Grace came to the house. She did not knock. She still has the code. She stood in the doorway like she did when she was 17 in a prom dress, except her eyes were older and her hands were empty. Dad, she said, voice shaking. The ERP vendor just called an early maturity. Colton says it is a misunderstanding, but they are freezing the platform on Friday unless we pay the whole year. Denise cannot process the transfer because the bank changed permissions. Did you do something? I took her to the kitchen table, poured her water, and set the glass on a coaster. Elena bought at a craft fair in 1999. Sweetheart, I said, I did not do it to you. I did it for you. Colton says, I held up a hand. Colton says a lot. She looked at her hands. He says the bank is old school, and you have got them wrapped. He says you are threatened by modernization. He says the only way we can scale is to pry your fingers off the past. Did he say he forged my name? She flinched. I saw the filing, Grace. I kept my voice flat. I saw the pass-through he set up with you as guarantor. I bought the paper underneath him because I do not call the sheriff if I can fix my own fence. Tears made their way down her face without hurry. He said you would overreact. People who build their plans on bad signatures always do. She wiped her cheeks. What happens now? Now, I said, we let gravity work. On Thursday morning at 8:07 a.m., Pritchard Insurance sent an email. Premium due, EOD to avoid lapse. Denise clicked to pay. The bank required my approval. The alert pinged my phone. I set it aside. At 9:14 a.m., the ERP vendor sent a second notice. Accelerated maturity under Section 7.3, Key Management Conduct. At 10:02 a.m., the receivables factor, owned by Cedarline, tightened remittance timing from 10 days to 3. At 10:17 a.m., Valley Fuel, my friend Grant's outfit, invoked a right to reclaim on the last 2 diesel deliveries under Tex Bus and Cum Code Section 2.702 due to misrepresentation of solvency. He did not have to explain how he would come to suspect misrepresentation. At 11 o'clock a.m., I received a calendar invite for a strategic alignment meeting in our own conference room from Colton. I walked in at 2 p.m. The room smelled like lemon wipes and nerves. Colton sat at the head. Grace sat to his right. Denise on the far side looked like she would slept in her car. Harlan stood in the back, arms crossed, jaw a rope under his beard. 2 men I did not know wore suits, dark enough to hide spilled bourbon. Colton gestured. Gracious. Big Jim, he said. Appreciate you making time. Agenda? I asked. He clicked a slide on the screen. Phase 2, capital stack optimization. Bullet points. Refinance. 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 We are in a temporary liquidity pinch, he said. Totally normal when you are executing a modernization sprint. But because of a legacy process hiccup, he winked at Denise like she was included. The insurance payment did not clear, no matter. We can bridge around with a short-term note from Stone Harbor. They are delighted with our growth story. Or, I said, we cannot. He smiled without teeth. We can and will. You are a minority partner now. Your consent is not required for working capital decisions. I looked at Grace. Am I? She did not speak. Did you dilute me with the new paper? I asked Colton. He tapped another slide. Cap table. We issued non-voting preferreds to the vehicle that acquired our ERP lease as receivable facilities, to Cedarline Holdings. I asked, and watched his eyes try to figure out which way to jump. He recovered. To the holder, it is not material who they are. It is material to me, I said, because I am they. Silence. Harlan grunted. One small sound, like a bench settling. Colton blinked. You bought what as a premium? That is suboptimal capital allocation. You forged my name to laver my dirt, I said. I bought the fire extinguisher. He reached for the tone men use when they want to be patient. You have inserted yourself into a process you do not understand. I understand gravity, I said, and slid a packet across the table. Here are notices of default under the ERP lease, the receivables facility. Here is a letter from Pritchard declining to bind a new fleet policy to unpaid premium. Here is a reservation of rights from Valley Fuel. Here is my certification as the sole authorized approver on Treasury transfers, pending a board vote. We do not have a board, he said, too fast. We do now, he laughed. You cannot create a board by fiat. You did, I said. Tuesday. In the amended and restated company agreement, you filed with Travis County. The suits shifted. One whispered. The other stopped. Here's how this goes, I said, folding my hands. You unwind the forged security instrument. You unwind the hilltop pass-through. You confess judgment on a civil fraud filing he will hold in draft, so a judge never has to read your name. You resign as COO. You sign a marital post-nup that carves out Grace's exposure to Stone Harbor, and then you go do whatever young men with soft hands do after they almost learn a lesson. Or we let Friday come. He tried a smile, then a smirk, then the kind of grin men wear when they want to make you mad. You would burn down your own company to prove a point? I could pull the fuel line from a truck before I let a child drive it through a school, I said. Grace stood. Colton, she said quietly. He is serious. He's bluffing, Colton said. I never learned how, I said. At 3:14 a.m. p.m. my phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Title insurer called me back. They are aware of signature issue. They are spooked. At 3:21 a.m., Stephen emailed. Mr. King, Stone Harbor attempted to initiate a wire to an external account. We declined. At 3:37 a.m., Pritchard, policy will lapse at 12:01 p.m. a.m. if funds not received. At 4:02 a.m., the ERP vendor portal logged out every user and posted a banner, account suspended. At 4:30 a.m., I walked out. Harlan followed me onto the platform overlooking the yard. The sun sat fat and low, heat heavy enough to make light bend. That boy's never changed a tire in the dark, he said. He's about to, I said. That night, I sat in my wife's rocking chair and waited for the sound of a phone that would not stop ringing. It did. Grace called at 9:12 a.m. crying. He says you are trying to ruin us. I am trying to end something before it ends you, I said. How does it end? Tomorrow, I said. By noon. I slept 2 hours. Maybe. Dawn came gray and kind. I drove to the yard early and watched a loader in silhouette against a pale sky. At 8:00 a.m., Ava texted. Stone Harbor filed a notice of intent to foreclose 21 days from now. At 8:03 a.m., I texted Judge Ramirez. File the TRR. At 8:09 a.m., he replied with a thumbs up emoji. God is not sanctioned, but clerks understand. At 8:15 a.m., I called Grant at Valley Fuel. You will have a certified check before noon, I said. Appreciate you, Jim. Was not sure who to believe. Leave the man who pays you. At 8:30 a.m., I sent a calendar invite to Colton. Subject line, exit interview, location, my office, time, 11:00 a.m. He accepted. At 10:12 a.m., Stephen called. Stone Harbor's counsel is on the line, and so is a VP. They are upset. They will be more upset in 20 minutes, I said. At 10:37 a.m., Ava emailed a single-page settlement framework. It was brutal and clean. At 11:00 a.m., Carlton walked in with his jaw clenched so tight you could hear enamel complain. He did not sit. You win, he said, and tossed a folder on my desk. For now. This is not a game, I said. He pointed at the yard. This is a museum with trucks. This is my life with men who know what it costs to build a thing that does not fall down when you turn away. Do you know, he said, leaning in, how small your world is? You are a king in a county of dirt. You could have been something. I offered you a way to scale. I scaled enough, I said, and I do not climb ladders I did not build. He smiled that smile again, the one that sells a product that breaks 2 months after the warranty expires. You think you have cornered me. You think buying a sliver of paper and cooking some insurance premium makes you powerful. Here is what is real. I still have your daughter's name on Hilltop's guarantee. I still have Stone Harbor on speed dial. I still have a way to make you extinct. You have air, I said, and slid him Eva's framework. Here are your choices. Sign this today and walk away with your watch and your teeth, or we litigate. You lose your licenses. You lose your pretty job. You watch a judge carve your name into a docket you cannot outspend. He looked down. He did not read. He just stared until the paper blurred and his eyes watered. She will hate you, he said. She will live, I said. He signed at 11:23 a.m. Initials and last name, ink, neat, hand steady, until he reached the paragraph that said, I confess, judgment. The pen paused. Then he wrote it anyway. At 11:40 a.m., Stephen walked in with a cashier's check for Pritchard. We shook hands. At 11:50 a.m., Grant picked up his diesel money at the counter and slapped the window glass with a grin. At 11:57 a.m., Ava filed the TRO. At 11:58 a.m., Denise sailed like a man resurfacing. At 11:59 a.m., the air conditioner in my office clicked and the room felt 10 degrees cooler. At 12:01 p.m., I sat alone and let my hands shake where no one could see. That night, I drove to Grace and Colton's house, the one I would deeded to them on their wedding day. Grace opened the door already crying, like she would been practicing. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and new furniture. A stack of moving boxes sat against the wall like white flags. "He says we can survive this," she said. "Says he will raise a bridge from his network." "He will not," I said. "Men who burn bridges always think they will build a better one farther downstream." She folded into my arms like she did when she was 6, and a dog chased her on Spikewood Springs. "Did you have to do it this way?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he would already decided how the story ends," I said. "I changed the ending." She pulled back and searched my face for the man who used to put quarters under her pillow and pretend she had not seen him do it. "Did Mom ever?" "She taught me to let people show you who they are," I said. "I only ever learned it once." Grace closed her eyes. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I said, "we changed the locks. I slept for 3 hours, then woke in the dark and sat on the porch while the sky attempted to lighten. Somewhere in the pecans, mockingbird practiced other birds' songs like a thief learning prayers. At 5:47 a.m. my phone buzz. "Ava, Stone Harbor wants a call. They are open to assignment." At 6:05 a.m., Stephen, "Bank appreciates your proactive risk management." At 6:22 a.m., Grant, "Come get brisket at lunch." Men measure the world in favors balanced and debts recorded in pencil, easy to erase. If you show up with smoke and bread. At 8:00 a.m., I called Stone Harbor. A man with a warranty voice answered. "We are flexible," he said, "if you are prepared to make us whole, plus a small premium to cover internal costs." "How small?" I asked. 300 basis points. I did the math and smiled. "Send paper," I said. "What's set with a problem long enough, it becomes a room. Eventually, every room has a door." I bought the door. By Friday close, Eaterline, which is to say I owned the note Stone Harbor, had hoped to ride into my yard like a sheriff with a clean holster. On Monday, Ava filed the assignment. On Tuesday, Judge Ramrez vacated the TRO as moot because we were now the secured party and had stipulated to our own restraint. On Wednesday, Colton found out. He called me 6 times. I let him leave the words on my machine like fish left on a dock in August. He also called Grace. She blocked him. Then he called my foreman. Arlen said, "Son, there is a difference between a man and a mouth." On Thursday afternoon, I met Colton one last time. I chose the place, the yard, on the platform above the scale house. The heat was mean. The air had that summer shimmer you can mistake for mercy from inside an air-conditioned truck. He walked up from the parking lot too fast for the weather, face red, shirt damp at the armpits. I watched him climb the stairs and remembered when he first shook my hand and said, "Sir," with the gratitude he might have meant. "You won't," he said, breath shallow. "No," I said. I ended. "What about Hilltop?" he asked, desperate. "What about the projects? The expansion? You cannot run this like a church bake sale forever. You have to grow." "I will," I said. "We will. But we will grow Papri concrete we can afford, and buying trucks we can fuel after the next storm." He looked past me at the bins, the conveyors, the men he never learned by name. You are going to kill it, slowly. No, I said. I am going to feed it, like it fed us. Grace will not forgive you. She will when she can breathe. He wiped his face with his palm, looked at his hand, looked at me. I never liked the way this place smelled. That is how I knew, I said. He laughed, short and bitter. What happens to me? You sign the things, I said. You keep your license because we will not file the complaint we could file. You leave Austin for a while. You find a town where men do not read UCC filings for fun. You learn to make money. You can fold with your hands. You really think you are the hero here, he said. I think I am the man who kept the roof from falling on my daughter, I said. He looked like he might say something that would oblige me to feel sorry for him. Then he decided against it. You know what your problem is, he said. You are not ambitious. I am, I said. I am ambitious for sleep. He went down the stairs. He did not look back. He got in a car he could not afford and drove away toward a future that would teach him the same lesson in a different county. I stood there until the sun dropped enough to let the day breathe. I could taste dust and diesel and the sweet metallic tang of heat on steel. When the loader poured the last bucket of river rock into bin 3, it sounded like applause. I went home, heated leftover brisket, and ate it at the kitchen island, while the house hummed and the clock over the stove ticked like a friendly metronome. I thought about Elena's laugh and Grace's first steps on a freshly sealed driveway that reflected the sky like a lake. I thought about the promise I would make Colton on the porch the day he first asked, and the promise I would kept when he forgot how to be a man. I washed my plate, turned off the light, and slept without dreaming. Colton did not disappear. Men like him never do. They resurface in newsletters and LinkedIn headshots, in advisory roles and boutique funds, with words like canyon or summit in the name. He popped up in Dallas within 3 months, principal at a shop specializing in bridge capital for legacy operators eager to unlock value in mature markets. The photo looked like a man who had been told the lighting would help. Grace moved back to a house with quiet floors. She kept her job at the Children's Hospital Foundation, where she knew every nurse on the oncology floor by first name. She stopped wearing the ring and started wearing her hair the way she liked, before someone told her how it looked. We did not talk about Colton unless we had to. Some names scald. Every Sunday she brought tacos, and we sat at the same kitchen table where Colton had once told me I did not understand modernization. We balanced my checkbook and her heart, both in pencil, as yard stabilized. We tightened routes, sold 2 trucks that cost more in downtime than they earned in haul, hired a 30-year-old superintendent who knew how to talk to men in their 50s, without making them feel like parts you could not source anymore. We bought software we could learn without a consultant who spoke in 90-day windows and deferred revenue. We paid cash for it. In October, a storm that was supposed to be nothing turned into 3 inches in 2 hours. A culvert on a county road washed out and left a gap big enough to eat a half-ton pickup. We got the call at 3 a.m. from a commissioner whose number I answer at any hour. Harlan's boys were on site with barricades by 3:40 a.m. and ripping old pipe a first light. We had rock on the ground at 8, a temporary passable fill by noon, and a real fix on order by dinner. The commissioner sent a thank you letter the next day on heavy paper you can feel with your eyes closed. We taked it in the break room. That is how a company breathes, one invoice at a time, one repair at a time, one storm at a time. The rest is story. But gravity does not just pull rocks downhill. It drags names into places they do not want to go. I got a call in late November from a reporter I like, man who writes for The Statesman, like he is paying off a debt to the nouns. He would heard about a quiet dispute between Kingfisher and a financial partner. He wanted to write a story about legacy Texas businesses navigating modernization. I told him the truth that fits between lies. The trick, I said, is not confusing spee with leverage. He laughed, then got serious. Off the record, did the son-in-law really forge your name? Off the record, I said. I have a rocking chair that holds my weight. He wrote a piece that was kind without being dumb. The phones rang for a day, and then the city remembered football. In December, Eva sent me a Christmas card with a line I underlined twice. Entropy favors the patient. I put it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a dump truck. Grace made in first grade. In January, Stone Harbor called to ask if we would like to participate in a small fund they were raising to buy distressed ERP paper. I said I would think about it. Then I did not. In February, Colton filed a petition in Travis County requesting a declaratory judgment that the settlement he signed under duress was invalid. He claimed I would threaten to destroy his livelihood and interfere with his marriage. Judge Ramirez smiled when he read it and asked me if I preferred to win on standing or substance. On manners, I said. We hired a lawyer whose voice could freeze water and filed a response with Exhibits A through R. Colton withdrew the petition before a hearing could be set. In March, Grace and I met with a marriage counselor who specialized in untangling marriages with financial abuse. The counselor had a white noise machine in the corner and a chair that made you sit honest. Grace said things I could not bear and needed to hear. She cried until the room felt like it was humid with grief. The counselor said a sentence I wish I would thought of. Manipulation is a story told at the volume of love. We sat with that until our fingers found each other on the cushion between us. In April, on a day when the bluebonnets confessed their sins across the medians and men in convertibles forgot they had hair, Colton drove down from Dallas and parked across the street from the yard. He watched our trucks roll in and out for an hour. Then he came in and stood in the office doorway while Denise looked at him, like you look at a dog that bit your child once and is smiling now. I need to see Jim, he said. Denise told him to have a seat. I let him wait 14 minutes. Then I walked out, wiped my hands on a rag like I would been doing something that left marks, and asked him what brought him to our side of the road. I came to apologize, he said, and for a moment I wanted to believe him. Okay, I said. He swallowed. He had aged around the eyes, a kind of tightness men get when they pretend fear is a plan. I thought I was building something for Grace, he said. I thought you were in the way. I was, I said. That was my job. He nodded and blinked. I wanted to be you, he said, and his face worked like a man trying to lift too much, but faster, cleaner, with better shoes. Shoes do not pour concrete, I said, and he laughed, one short mark that slipped and fell. He looked around at the map on the wall and the photo of Elena in a hard hat pretending to scold Harlan in 1997 and the whiteboard where magnets lived and died. I did not understand, he said. I believe you, I said. He took a breath and let it out, watched it leave like it might not come back. I thought maybe I could do something for the company, for Grace. Something that proves I am not. He did not finish. Leave her alone, I said. That's what you can do. He nodded. I am moving, he said. Out of state. Nashville, maybe. They still believe in men like me there. Everywhere believes in men like you, I said. They just believe slower once you leave a paper trail. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, then like he wanted to beg, then like he wanted to forget his own name. If she ever needs anything, she needs rain in July and a father who does not forgive in a way that looks like an invitation, I said. He stood there for a long moment as the yard thumped and breathed and ignored him. Then he held out his hand. I looked at it and thought about all the hands I have shaken after fights, where men said things you cannot unsay. I thought about the night on the Driscoll patio when he demonstrated how a gentleman can pronounce the word sir like a threat. I did not take his hand. I tapped the desk once with my knuckles like a gavel. He nodded as if I would confirm a suspicion. Goodbye, Mr. King. It is Jim, I said, and he winced, because sometimes mercy is sharper than a knife. He left. I watched him cross the street and get in a rental with a Florida plate. He looked in the rearview mirror at a man who had learned a lesson too late and drove away into a future that would not be kind and would not be cruel, just exact. In May, Grace filed for divorce. We did not do a ceremony to mark the filing. We ate enchiladas and watched a movie about a dog that did not die, and when she fell asleep on the couch, I turned the TV down and let the house be a safe thing. In June, a young man named Elias came by to apply for a job as a yard hand. He wore boots that had seen 6 months and a pride that had seen more. He answered questions like a man who did not want to waste my time. I asked him where he learned to look a man in the eyes. He said, prison, and did not flinch. I hired him. He has been here a year now, and the only trouble he has caused is putting too much pride into sweeping the scale house. He sends his mother a picture of his pay stub every other Friday. Sometimes the country deserves us. In July, Denise retired. We threw her a party with pink cupcakes and jokes about accruals, and a gift she cried over, a quilt Grace made from old Kingfisher t-shirts, 1 square for every software migration that gave her migraines. She hugged me like a daughter and whispered, do not let them talk us into clouds we cannot see. I promised I would not. In August, the county commissioner sent another letter. This one was about a bridge we would kept standing with baling wire and memory. Until the budget lined up with will, he wrote, some men come when there is a check, some come when there is a need. You are the second kind. Thank you. We taped that one next to the first, and the men looked at it when they thought nobody was watching. In September, Race came by the yard with tacos and a smile. Wet was not pretending anymore. You got time? She asked. We sat on the platform with our feet over the rail, like we used to do when she was 9, and I would bring her on Saturdays to count trucks, like they were sheep. I saw Colton, she said. Where? He was in town for a day. He did not see me. What did he look like? Like a man who looks at store brand and pretends it is a choice. We ate in companionable silence. The sun was less cruel by then. The air guessed at fall. A mockingbird tried on new voices in the pecan. You were right, she said. About what? About the ending, she said, changing it before he wrote it. I was wrong about something, I said. What? That you would hate me for it. She nudged my shoulder with her head, like she did when she was small. I did, she said, for a while, but then I breathed. We watched Harlan yell at a loader, like Yang could sweep talk a hydraulic line back into Grace. You know what I remember most about Mom? She asked. So many answers, I said. She always knew when something was about to break, Grace said. She did not panic. She just put a towel under it and went to get the right wrench. I laughed. She married a man with too many towels. Race wiped salsa off her fingers with a napkin she would brought from the kitchen, because she is my daughter, to an indecent degree. I do not know how you knew when to stop him, she said, but I am glad you did. I knew when he changed how the yard smelled, I said. She made a face. That is not a metric. It is, I said. It is just not on his deck. That night, I dreamed that Elena knocked on the kitchen door, even though she has been dead 27 years. In the dream, she had sawdust in her hair, and her laugh hit the tile like a coin. You did good, she said. You did not try to be a hero. You tried to be a father. I woke up with tears drying on my temples and felt less alone in a house that sometimes tries too hard to be quiet. In October, Ava sent me a photo from Nashville. Colton standing beside a banner for an alternative credit summit, name badge clipped to a lapel that did not fit quite right. He looked like a young man in a costume. Ava captioned it, "Entropy still favors the patient." I texted back a picture of the yard, bathed in golden light, with two boys wrestling a tarp over a load like it was a sail, captioned, "So does work." By Thanksgiving, the divorce was final. Grace and I ate turkey with the men who had nowhere else to go and laughed at jokes older than the trucks. A young laborer FaceTimed his baby, and the baby looked at our faces on a screen like he would known us since he was sand. Harlan carved the bird like it had wronged him, and then wiped tears with his wrist when we told him he was taking the leftovers home to his wife, who does not like parties, but likes my cranberry sauce. In December, a woman from the chamber asked me to speak at a luncheon about succession and legacy for family businesses. I told her I would rather pour concrete. She said there would be chicken. I stood in a ballroom with bad acoustics and told a room full of men with square watches and women who know what board minutes cannot fix that legacy is not a line item. It is a smell. It is the way a yard feels at 5:30 a.m. when the first truck turns over and the man who drives it rubs his hands together and looks at the sky like he is checking who is on his crew. It is the noise Seal makes when you seat it right. It is a daughter who brings tacos on Sunday and a wife who still tells you which wrench to fetch when the floor grows a leak. Afterward, a boy with hair like a news anchor asked me how to de-risk family while optimizing capital. I told him to sweep the scale house until he can tell a lie by the sound it makes. And that is where I would have left it. Quiet, finished, a story with edges sanded smooth, a lesson filed away with the rest. But gravity had one more pull in it. In January the following year, on a morning so cold that the breath of the trucks looked like the yard was on fire, a letter arrived from a law firm with more names than sense. Colton had been arrested in Nashville for violating Tennessee securities statutes, promising returns on a fund that was not fund, taking temporary placement fees he forgot to return, moving money between entities like a man moving shells in a game he did not realize someone had started, foaming. The letter was not to me. It was to Grace. It informed her that, as a former spouse, she might be called to testify regarding character and material facts, because, in the absence of better stories, men always go looking for women to say the thing that saves them. Grace brought the letter over and set it on the table like a small bomb. "Do I have to go?" she asked. "You have to tell the truth," I said. "What is the truth?" "That he tells a story at the volume of love," I said, and she smiled without humor. "She testified in March." She took an oath and answered questions with an honesty I envied. She did not embellish. She did not exact a price. She told a plain story about a man who confuses momentum with virtue. She came home and cried until she could not breathe. I made her tea she would not drink, and sat on the floor while she leaned against the cabinet and let the pieces of a year fall out of her like penny nails in a torn bag. In April, Colton accepted a plea. In May, he was sentenced to a term that will teach him what sentences are made of. Grace asked me if I felt vindicated. I told her, no. Men who chase money down wells never hit bottom where you think they will. They keep falling through new rooms. By summer, the yard had its rhythm back, Wilfred teens trust after a scare. We hired 2 apprentices and put them with Harlan, even though he scares new men like a story you tell around a fire. He taught them to set forms and check slump, and never lie about a load time, because nothing murders trust like a clock. One afternoon, I stood on the platform while the sun laid down flat as a blanket, and watched a boy in a hard hat carry 3 shovels like a cross. Grace came up with 2 bottles of cold water and handed me one. You ever wish you would said yes, she asked. To what? To his deck, to his speed, to a world where we have twice as many trucks and half as much sleep. I have wished a lot of things, I said. Not that. She nodded, drank, wiped her mouth with the back of her wrist, like a man who has a crew and a schedule. Sometimes I think the only thing that saved us is that you love dirt more than money, she said. I love roofs that do not leak, I said. Money buys a roof. Dirt gives you a reason to keep one. We stood there while the yard exhaled. A mockingbird made a sound like a squeaky pulley, and then, angry at itself, tried another tune. Do you ever miss him? I asked. Which him? She said, and then answered her own question. The one he tried to be sometimes. The one who looked at me like I was a plan he could keep. I waited. I miss being looked at that way, she said. But not by him. Someone will look at you right, I said. She laughed. You always say that like you are ordering lunch. Because you are easy to feed, I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we watched a truck back under a bin with the practiced patience of a man who has learned to let machines earn their keep. You know the part I never tell? She said. Tell it. Sometimes I hate that you saved me. Sometimes I hate that I had to, I said. We were quiet for a long minute. Then she said, thank you, like a confession, like a prayer. You are welcome, I said, because some sentences survive any weather. Weeks later, I saw a boy at the counter pay cash for a load of base gravel to fix a driveway for a woman he called Auntie, though his eyes said their blood did not match. He counted the bills slow, careful. He took the receipt like a ticket out of something. I thought of Colton in a ballroom and in a jail cell and in a kitchen where his mother taught him some lesson that did not stick, and I felt nothing like triumph and everything like weather. On a Saturday in late October, I drove out to Luling and sat in my truck on the edge of a field where my father used to cut hay with a tractor he loved more than some men love their sons. The sky was so large it hurt. I got out and walked until the ground changed the way ground does when you step from one kind of story into another. I bent, grabbed a handful of dirt, and let it go. It fell in a way Colton never understood, and I always will. On the drive back, Race called. You busy? No. Can you help me change a light fixture? She asked. Turn the breaker first, I said. I know, she said, and laughed. But can you still come? Yes, I said, and did. We taught the fixture how to hang straight in a house that has learned to be safe. We ate tacos again, because food is a ritual that tells the day what to do. We watched a movie that ended the way it should, not the way it could. When the credits rolled, I stood to go. Dad, she said. Yeah? I want to buy in, she said, to the company, not the paper, the work. I looked at my daughter and saw Elena standing behind her, nodding. We will do it slow, I said. 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 2 weeks later, we signed papers the old way, with pens that ran ink like rivers, and witnesses who knew where the bodies are buried, because they helped dig the holes for the footings. Grace bought a piece of the company she grew up inside. We changed nothing about our trucks and everything about our days. We sat with Ava and built a plan that reads like a promise. We put Harlan in charge of teaching schedules to men who think they already know how to read a clock. We told Denise to stop by whenever she missed being yelled at by printers. We bought a new coffee machine and a used forklift. We told Stephen to never call me Mister again, and he tried to stop and could not. When the ink dried, Grace and I walked out onto the platform. The yard looked like the inside of a chest opening for air. The men looked like men. The trucks looked like cattle ready to move. The sky looked like Texas. What do you smell? I asked. She closed her eyes and breathed. Work, she said, and rain. Good, I said. That is legacy. In the years after, people told the story 3 ways. Some said an old man destroyed a young man's dream because he was scared. Some said a con artist learned a lesson the hard way. Some said a father protected his daughter. All of them were wrong, and all were right. Stories are like roads. We lay them straight, and life finds ways to curve them. Here is the version I keep for myself. A man tried to leverage the ground under my feet by forging the name on my deeds. I bought the force he thought he would use against me and turned it into gravity. I did it without raising my voice, because I have learned that revenge is loud only when it is cheap. The expensive kind is quiet. It sounds like a pen scratching a confession and a cashier's check sliding across a counter and a door clicking closed softly behind a man who will never open it again. The day Grace took her first owner's call, 4:37 a.m., a driver with a sick kid and a truck that would not turn over. I stood in the doorway and watched her speak in a voice that carried both love and the schedule. She said, "Take care of your boy. We will cover your route." Then she hung up and looked at me like she would just lifted something heavy and realized she could. "Do you ever get tired of this?" she asked. "Every day," I said. "And never." We drove to the yard before the sun. The mockingbird tried on the day's first lie and then coughed it back up. Harlan cussed at a tire until the tire regretted being rubber. The coffee machine decided to work and then did. We stood on the platform and watched men arrive in the dark like ships finding a harbor. "Dad," she said. "Yeah?" "He called me obsolete," she said, smiling at the memory, like a cat that learned about dogs the good way. "He really said that." "He did. What did you feel?" "Nothing useful," I said. "Me too," she said. A truck rolled under bin 2. The gate opened. Aggregate fell in a silver cascade. So beautiful some mornings it feels like a kind of church. The driver checked his mirror, tapped the side of his cab, and eased out like a man who knows he is heavy, invaluable, and true. We have since replaced the whiteboard with a big screen that looks like a whiteboard. The magnets are still magnets. Now they are digital squares that only move when Harlan's finger allows. We still keep the old board in the back room. When the Wi-Fi goes down, or the software throws a fit, we move the magnets by hand, and discover we have not forgotten how. I will die here someday, I think. On a day when the sky has the decency to be kind, Grace will take the call and hang the towel under the new leak and fetch the right wrench and then make the coffee and then sign whatever needs signing. A mockingbird will steal someone's song and return it better. Men will drive trucks through the dawn. A daughter will lean on a rail and breathe dirt and diesel and something like love. And somewhere, in a city that teaches finance to boys who mistake mirrors for windows, a man will tell a story about a company he almost had. He will say the old man was unfair. He will say the old man was unmodern. He will not say the old man bought his decks and handed him his name in a sentence that ends with a period you can hear. In the end, revenge was not a plan. It was a refusal. I refused to let forgery become legacy. I refused to let leverage replace love. I refused to teach my daughter that silence means surrender. I taught her what Elena taught me. Tighten the bolt that matters. Leave the rust where it cannot hurt anyone. And when a man calls you obsolete, remind him that the ground he is standing on belongs to someone who knows its name. Gravity did the rest.